What is the most petty reason someone has gotten a divorce? Story 1. Grandma sued her second husband for a divorce because he got me a puppy for my 7th birthday. She felt the puppy outshined her present to me. Story 2. My mill and her second husband. They both sell secondhand books. They had a large hall where they kept the books, divided by a middle path. There had fallen a book out of a box and laid in the middle on the path. They had such a fight about whose book it was, they divorced over it. The book was worth $4 and they both made $150K plus per year. Edit. Damn, this comment blew up to answer the most asked questions. No, I don't know who ended up with the book. It was a children's book about a bear. Yes, she makes a lot of money with it. They had deals with secondhand shops, companies who clean out houses of people that passed, etc., that they could go through their books and buy them for a few bucks per book. Books can be very expensive if you know what to look for. Science, theology, or philosophy books can sometimes go for $200 or $300, even a $1,000 for special editions, etc. So they sell them online on a similar website as Amazon. Story 3. Someone I currently work with used to work in an oncology department where one of the doctors divorced his wife for getting cancer. Everyone in the department basically hated him. I recall my colleague saying that new hires were all informed of what he'd done, so everyone could be on the same page of knowing he was a terrible person. From what I hear, his wife beat the cancer, and I think the guy eventually changed hospitals he worked at. Story 4. I'm a divorce attorney. Had a client whose wife filed for divorce because she didn't get along with his sister one time. They had one disagreement. Seriously? That was it. He didn't stick up for his wife. She got mad and filed for divorce. She said on the stand that they had a great marriage. He was a good father, but that one incident was too much. The judge told them, "This is the dumbest reason I've ever seen anyone get divorced." And he'd been a judge for 20 plus years. Story 5. I hope my friend doesn't mind me sharing this story, but her husband divorced her after 3 months because she wasn't cuddling or affectionate enough for him. Mind you, this was her first marriage, let alone first relationship, and this was his 3rd marriage. They both worked full-time, but he worked 2 HRs away and would sometimes have to stay the night at work because it was more convenient for him all around. But when he got home, he expected food, sex, and cuddles. Never brought this up to her until the day he said it was over. Story 6. I knew this couple. The guy was 3 years younger than me, and we went to school together as kids, where the husband was a farmer, and he put his wife through school, and she got her degrees. She started off as a nurse and worked her way up, and became a PA. Once she started working at a doctor's office, she thought she was too smart for her dumb farmer husband and divorced him because he wasn't educated. Story 7. A friend of mine had a seizure during the night. Ended up in the ICU for a couple of days, then was on a LOA for 90 days. The day after he found out that he was going to need to take an LOA, his wife went and filed for divorce, stating that without his regular level of income, he was useless to her. Story 8. I volunteer at an animal shelter. A couple came in one day and got into a huge argument over one of our cats. She had a temporary shelter name on the door, Tinkerbell. The woman thought it was an adorable name and just perfect for the kitty. The husband absolutely refused to have anything to do with the name Tinkerbell and insisted that if they did adopt the cat, they'd have to change her name. There followed about 15 minutes of off and on bickering, with her insisting that this cat was the embodiment of Tinkerbell, and the husband peppering his rebuttal with suggestions like pickles and wombat. I explained that the cat had only had the name for a month and pointed out that most people change their cat's name when they adopt. But she said that changing an animal's name was cruel, and anyway, her cat was absolutely a Tinkerbell. Then she persisted in speaking to the poor creature in that awful baby talk people use when confronted with adorable animals. I thought she was pretty annoying. Apparently her husband thought so too, because after a few more minutes of her cooing at poor Tinkerbell, the husband abruptly said, "I don't want a pet named Tinkerbell. In fact, I don't want a pet at all. I want a divorce," and then he walked off. We reassured Tinkerbell that she was not responsible for their divorce and adopted her out only a few hours later to a lovely couple who named her Daisy. Story 9. Heard of a case where someone filed for divorce because their spouse was too loud, chewing. It's like the marriage crumbled under the weight of a potato chip. Goes to show sometimes it's the little things that can make or break a bond. Story 10. My ex became a gym bro after getting married. 2 years into it, he asked for a divorce because he was upset I did not know how much weight he was lifting in the leg press machine. Some months before, he had banned me from going with him to the gym because I did not match his vibe. So when I returned, I was kind of doing my thing and my own routine. But not focusing fully on him was apparently the wrong move. So well, that narcissist type. Obviously, he had a new girl immediately after, but the reason he gave me about the weight was just so petty. Story 11. IDK if you could really say it's petty because it's due to cheating, but the situation was kind of bizarre to me. I had these neighbors, husband and wife, lived across the street from me for a long time. They were easily in their 70s, maybe a little older. IDK never asked their ages. Anyway, eventually I noticed that the wife wasn't outside with him anymore when he'd sit on the porch. I asked about her one day and he told me that she cheated on him with a guy in his 20s and left to be with him. 50-year marriage down the drain. I guess maybe she wanted someone who was the same age as her and her husband were when they first got married. Story 12. My mom did that to my stepfather. Met some weird man boy on a chat room or dating site and divorced my stepdad. Moved the guy in, and that was that. It wasn't sexual, or at least, I don't want to think about that. She was by that time mostly a shut-in and deep into bad health problems and was very overweight. The boyfriend had his own room, full of toys, Lego sets, action figures, gaming PC, and several consoles. He worked part-time IT at a hospital and took a few college classes a semester. They were affectionate, had pet names and such. He mad friends with my sister, who is well on her way to the same health issues as our mother with a seizure disorder as well. She's 15 years younger than me, and my stepdad was her father. Anyway, it was pretty clear what was up. My mother was his sugar mama. Mom had inherited a ton of money from her parents, and had a substantial trust fund. She sat me down one day and told me with a straight face, completely lucid, that she knew exactly what she was doing, that she loved him but knew what the arrangement was. She didn't have much time left and wanted me to be the trustee of her estate. So here's my will. I just got finished up with my lawyer, so it's ironclad in what I want. She passed a few months later, in the hospital on Christmas morning. My brother, sister, and the boyfriend were all there. As soon as it was called, I stepped out of the room, and my brother and sister followed. Sister, who it must be said is rather clueless, obnoxious, and has absolutely no filter, says to us both, "I just thought you should know that Mom wrote both of you out of her will." I already knew this, of course, and knew part of the logic was that we had both worked our asses off and become somewhat successful, and my sister was an idiot and the boyfriend was... At the end of the day, the boyfriend got the house and half of her remaining trust from her parents. My sister got the other half, an additional cash lump sum. It's just a nice middle-class suburban house, and we're not talking millions of dollars, but my sister will never have to work. Having to administer all of this and having people like my father, her first husband, throw a temper tantrum because of what she did and tell me to get my own lawyer and fight it after I had been through an 11-year business lawsuit, just know, was depressing. Haven't seen or talked to my sister in 5 or 6 years, and she's resentful because I set up the trust to pay out consistently for a good long time, and she wanted to go apeshit and spend it all on dumb shit. She blew the lump sum portion of $40K on a $40K brand new pickup truck, and actually taunted me with it like a small child in the parking lot of the financial planner's office where we had the trust set up. I don't care. Let's do this so I can fucking go back to work. Anyway, I honestly don't think about it very often, but you know how it is? You see some shit on askreddit and you're like, ooh, I have something for that. Story 13. I have a cousin who has been married 4 times for a year and a half collectively. The most recent divorce happened after a month when she told him he needed to cut the grass since it was tall. He got all pissed off and called it quits. Their preacher went to talk to him and told him, well, she's right. The grass is getting tall. You do need to cut it. My cousin's response dead ass was, I know that, but ain't no woman gonna tell me what to do. Story 14. My friend claims his wife divorced him for no reason and that he did nothing to deserve this. The wife said he spent 92% of their time together with his face in his phone. I can corroborate this because that's the same reason I stopped hanging out with him. I'd be telling a story and I'd look over to him and he'd be typing away on his phone, not listening to a damn thing I'm saying. Story 15. My ex-wife was the most negative, self-absorbed human I've ever met. She didn't start out that way. I wouldn't have married her if she had been that way from the beginning. Everything had to be her way. When I started saying no to her, then she filed for divorce. I don't know how it is in all states, obviously, but in our state, the person that filed has to get on the stand and state the reason they need the divorce. She got on the stand, and the judge asked her why she was filing for divorce. She said, well, we're just 2 different people. The judge responded, You're going to have to do much better than that. She thought for a few seconds and said, We don't see eye to eye. I see things as black and white and he sees things as gray. The judge had a dumbfounded look on his face. He looked at me with what appeared to be a look of pity and excused her from the stand. He signed our papers. Story 16. Couple was happily married with 4 kids and deeply devoted to each other. Their oldest son tragically and unexpectedly died, and the husband almost immediately walked out on the family and filed for divorce afterwards. Luckily, his ex-wife nailed him in divorce court and now he has to pay a shit ton of alimony and child support. Eat it. The guy is a selfish POS. He refused to show up to his own son's funeral, tried to take full custody of the other kids, and openly paints himself the victim of parental alienation on Facebook because the kids hate his guts and want nothing to do with him. Story 17. My ex-husband said he wanted a divorce because I didn't do enough dishes. I told him it may have something more to do with the fact that every time he saw a pregnant woman, he would cry, and we were running out of acceptable options to have kids. Then he told me he cheated on me with a woman Tilda, 13 years his junior, who lived halfway across the world, while I was visiting my parents, getting some measure of comfort that he could not provide after our dog died, and I did everything to take care of him in logistics. I don't think it was the dishes. Story 18. Okay, so my great-grandmother, who I called my G-Granny, was married 21 times. 7 were stereotypical gold digger marrying an old man scheme where she inherited the money or whatever they had when they passed. 4 were straight gold digger, I'm taking half, fuck you marriages. 10 fucking times she was married to one guy, my biological great-grandfather, a man who I'll call Terry, and I only met once, when I was a baby right before he passed. This dude was 100% in on her schemes. Terry basically played the part of a permanent affair partner. They loved each other from all accounts, and were your stereotypical Southern couple on the outside. But like, damn if it weren't a lie. They would get married, legit, and she would wear her ring. Then she would go work a bar, a hotel, or a higher-end store and meet rich men who would hit on her. She would dangle the forbidden fruit of her being married to them and would convince some sorry fool to marry her if she left her husband. Rinse, repeat. Hell, she would even get these affair partners to pay for her divorce, sucking them dry. Now, with that said, the 9th and final time they were divorced was, by all accounts, a legit breakup. They had separated for a few years due to his work taking him out of state. She didn't want to go, he did. Sad breakup. During that time, she racked up a few more marriages, and even got a gas station and hotel out of it somewhere in Arkansas. He came back. She was finally done with her ways, and they remarried. Marriage number 19, until she met another guy who liked the forbidden fruit. A man I'll call Carl. But she said, no, I am married, I ain't about that, I am a loyal woman. It was my biological great-grandfather, none other than Terry himself, who said, Nah, he got money and I want it. Who pushed her to do it? Surprise, surprise, she does so. But unlike the others, it seemed more out of desperation and less from greed. He paid for the divorce, but it ended up more contested. He stayed with her for 9 years. No other, including Terry, had had a consecutive streak that long. My family still raves about this man, about how tender he was to her, about how sweet he was to her children. My own grandmother loves him more than her own daddy, yet she had not a cross word to say about her own daddy as well. In her words, he was just better. Carl ended up passing cancer just short of 10 years with my G-Granny. She had gone from mid-40s to mid-50s with this man. Sure, she inherited his money, which turned out to be basically a few houses right next to each other and about $15,000. She spent a good chunk of it on his burial and small renovations on the houses. By the time he had passed, he had moved her, her sister and her husband, and her brother into the 3 houses. Terry and her would remarry a few years later until his death in the mid-90s. She would pass in 03 of Alzheimer's. Eventually, her fortune that she had tried to amass turned into her house, some really expensive jewelry, and a closed gas station. She had sold or lost everything else. So that is the story of how my biological great-grandmother divorced my great-grandmother for not having an affair on him. Story 19. My brother's ex-wife only married him to prove a point to her parents that she could settle down with someone and raise a family and stop partying all the time. She divorced him after having a kid with him and making him get a vasectomy because she never loved him in the first place and was miserable. Story 20. My first workplace after college. 2 women in the department of similar ages start hanging out. One is just married, the other is single but has a brother. Watched for 6 months as the single one worked on splitting up one marriage only to shove her new BFF into the arms of her brother. Reason for the split: differences in fidelity. The new couple most definitely consummated the relationship long before the divorce was even drafted. I feel sorry for her ex-husband. He didn't stand a chance against a firefighter just post 9/11s and his sister making his case every single day. No kids, thankfully. Story 21. My ex told me his grandmother was into astrology and psychic readings when she was younger. I don't know about her interest in her later years. Apparently, she got a reading that said her third marriage would be the one that lasted, so she married and divorced quickly twice to get to the third guy. They did last until she passed, so maybe she was onto something, but maybe she was in too deep at that point and would have stayed just to prove a point. I always found it pretty wild. Well, that was very interesting, especially story 12 and 18 shocked me. Write your opinion in the comments.